Bass lines make the world go round, and in today's video you're going to learn a number of bass lines that you can use for dance music. So if you're dealing with a bit of writer's block, get a kick in there and pick one of these bass lines to start your song. The first bass line is the OG bass line, and it's the offbeat bass line. Very easy to program. You're going to set a 1/8 pattern and you're going to drop your MIDI note, not on the first bar, but on the second one. And from there, you're just going to duplicate it across. Now, offbeat bass lines can be used with various different kinds of sounds. For example, here's a very basic bass. From there, you can also just use a saw. Use a filter to make the saw a little less bright. And if you want to add the punch, you can always grab an envelope to move this to the right. You lower the sustain, and with the decay, you're going to control the punchiness of it. Control the amount you're opening it up by. Now, the offbeat bass will have various variations. For example, a donk is a very popular thing to use the offbeat bass with. If that's feeling a little too simple, a little too basic for you, but you still want to have that 1/8 vibe to it, then consider using a reverse bass. Reverse bass lines are pretty much going to be sidechain basses, bass lines that go from quiet and they have a gradual increase to loud. My favorite way of making them is utilizing Serum. I love Serum because it has very flexible LFOs. Let's say I have a saw, right? I already have a sidechain going. But if I lower the level down and use this LFO, I can then click here and shape it. The way you want to visualize this is pretty much how the sound is going to appear to us. How is it going to develop? Now, with reverse basses, usually the key is this LFO shape. If you have it set wrong, it can sound a little too static, but when you get just the right shape to it, you get this nice pump effect to it. The thing is, it's very similar to the offbeat bass if I do this. But the difference here is instead of it being instant, right? The offbeat bass just comes in on the 1/8, pop, pop. This one is more of a wah, wah. And it's all in this LFO shape here. Now with this kind of bass, things can get really like distorted, really aggressive, real fast. Don't be scared to use your filters. Remember, filters are there to remove frequencies when needed. And if you're in a wavetable synth and you're seeking just something a little more unique, don't be scared to also go into the digital or spectral section of your wavetable synth of choice so that you can get these cool tones. Once you find something you like, consider layering it with a wave that's a bit more analog, as it will help just support it while still having that interesting sound. So here, I'm just going to route B into the filter, but not A. So that way B, we use the meat of B and allow A to just sit on top nicely and provide that unique tone that we want. Now, distorted bass lines are great, but if you feel like maybe that's still a bit too mainstream for you and you want to take it even more underground, knock or tom bass lines are a pretty good tool to use if you want to make something a lot more groovier and more tech. Here I have a bass loop from a new pack called Poppy Trance Volume 2 coming out at the end of this week. If you wanted to make something like that, then all you have to do is get a 909 tom to create the groove. Now don't be scared to go further if you want. Let's use the hot variation. You do have this tune feature, which changes the pitch of the tom that you are using. And with that, you can pretty much have the note for the first hit and the note for the second hit. So it doesn't have to sound like that. Now, if you're feeling a little Sarah Laundry, but maybe you don't want to go up that high, then you can also utilize a knock bass. Knock bass lines can be made with kicks, or you can synthesize them in your synth of choice. But the cool thing about them is that they're somewhat atonal. They don't really have a key, so you're going based more on the tone. However, the way they sound is pretty warehouse, pretty old school, pretty 90s rave. I mean, I don't know if this was played in the 90s, man, because I'm a 90s kid, so get me? programming of this bass is going into a 1/16 format. You're going to omit that first one, but you're going to add it to your second, your third, and your fourth in this bar. Kick is going to hit in these sections, so you can technically use a kick that just covers this portion if you find the right one, and you just have it roll all the way through. Like I said before, you can also make this bass by utilizing kicks. From there, consider adding amps, distortion, delay if you choose to. Now, if all of that doesn't sound dance enough for you, because that's not what dance means to you, what dance means to you is euphoricness, old school Armin van Buuren, styles, and consider using the traditional trance OG rolling bass line. So very similar to the rolling knock bass that we just did before this. You can grab the middle note and you hold shift and click up to make it go up an octave. And from there, you will get the original trance bass line. This one, you can also keep it simple, just using some saws. Some people like putting delay on their rolling bass. With all the bass lines we've talked about, with the exception of the knock and tom bass, most of them you should be able to move around. Let's say you're following a chord progression. Oh baby, tell me why you want to meet me at the bar, at the bar. You say you like my personality. Is that the truth, or is that a flaw? Yeah. Trance basslines are my favorite, and from there we can start getting into other ones. By moving these guys down and not doing the octave up thing we just did, we can remove the first note and create what we call gallop bass. Now, maybe there's a better term for it, but the reason I call it the gallop bass is because every time I hear it, it just reminds me of a very fine dude on a horse with long hair just galloping. It's very bouncy. And it also does a lot for us. Another cool thing is if you have the offbeat bass, you can also just have one hit once and then have the other ones remain on offbeat. So that way you add a bit more groove. And in the words of someone that watched me make a song with an offbeat bass, man, that bass sounds so basic, bro. Add some more. So you can always add some more by now, if your mom took LSD in the 90s, or you want to call on someone, aka Marlon Hofstad songs, then you probably want this bass, the 1/8 bass. So the 1/8 bass, the way you're going to program it is you're going to go 1/8, and you're just going to fill in all the squares on one note. From there, you're going to grab the second note here, shift it up, shift it up, shift it up. Very similar to the trance G, right? But the difference is that this one just sounds retro as heck. When it follows the chord progression, basic saw can fill the role of this. With this one in particular, though, on the sidechain, you do want to add this band just so that you hear the first note and you get that. Now we can add another saw here, copy A to B, and detune slightly too to get even more. Now, bass that is currently making a comeback, especially for drops, is a Reese bass, but not the traditional one that many of us learned to make. The way we're going to do this is we're going to use two saws. We're going to detune them slightly, one at -30, the other one at 30. And from there, we can put these at -2. So we get somewhat of a beating sound like this. We're going to mono legato it. And from there, we're going to use a sub and put a sine for the low end. And from there, we can use a filter on the saws in order to remove that high end that you just heard. And we're going to get this sound. Now, we can use an MG Low 18 dB filter. That just means that the slope is not going to be as strict as a 24, but it's going to be stricter than a 12 and a 6. So let's less highs out. And from there, we're going to add a bit of a resonance. Now, from there, we apply a key track. And when we program this bass, the reason we add the key track is because with the MIDI, when we jump up an octave, the filter moves up and gives this really cool effect that you hear in a lot of these tracks at the moment. So you just want to get it at the right spot. You can experiment with a 12 as well. Made a whole video about this bass because even though the one we just made sounds dope, you can also make it sound a lot more different where it sounds kind of spectral like this, that top part. Now, another interesting thing for me with dance music at the moment is people are making like 140 to 150 BPM house music, or I think it's called groove. So pretty much you just want to make a standard house bass line like so, a very basic patch, and have a groove and have fast drums going with it. With these house bass lines, it's all about making them sound groovy. Make sure on the patch you're using, you have your mono legato on and you have a bit of portamento, so that way you can start to glide. And from there, when you're making the bass, you just want to make a bass that's super groovy and super fun. And the way we can do that is, one, we can start using more of the ands. So usually the ands are going to be in between the 1 and the offbeat. So if we have this, then we get the traditional 1/8 or the offbeat bass, as we know already. But to get more of a groovier bass, we want to start using more of these. For instance, here I could do that. And then I could go here to the and. The length with these bass lines is important, by the way, because it adds to the groove. And then here I want to do, and when I can feel the groove on it, then I can choose to duplicate it. All right. From there, we can start to pick notes. So for instance, simple like little hack you can do is you can always go to the notes that are part of your one chord, depending on the scale. For instance, G minor will contain the notes G, B flat, D, and F. So if I want to make something that's going to sound good, I can instantly go to these. And that's a very simple way to get the groove going. Now, from here, the reason I had you add the portamento and the mono on legato on the synth is because now, let's say I want to elongate this note, but I want it to glide down. I can add a MIDI note below it. And the higher the portamento value, the longer it takes to get down to that note. So this allows us to do some pitch bends, what I would call the easy way, because you don't have to go into the envelope and do the pitch bend there. You can just do it like this, and I just find it a lot more fun to program it this way. Groovy. And then just fill the top with drums and go ham. But you can use house basslines at this BPM, and it just sounds more ravey because then you can add chord stabs on top and have a lot of fun with it. Finally, the last bass is a very classic bass that comes from the Korg M1, which is an organ bass. Okay, so if you have the Korg M1 plugin, even better, because you can go on that plugin and find this particular sound in it by going into Program, going into Browse, and then going into Organ and using Organ 2 or Organ 1. And you get this Korg M1 sound, which sounds delicious, and you've heard it in so many songs, and you can use it in any format. And it gives you this nice harmonic bass. And this bass, you can use it in multiple different ways. You can do the groove with it. I don't know if you can do the rolling bass line with it, but the cool thing is you can also do the offbeat with it. It's a very iconic bass, bro. The past few months, I've been studying and analyzing these tracks that are at 140 BPM dance music that are loved by many people. And these are majority of the bass lines that I've heard in their music. Some of them are new to me, and I hope that some of them become new to you and inspire you to make the music that you want. You know, you can trust these bass lines because you know they will work. They've been used in songs that work. So now it's up to you to put your own twist or use them to make your own creations. I was analyzing a lot of these tracks because I currently made a pack called Poppy Trance Volume 2, which is meant to make your life a lot easier if you're looking at making this style of dance music. Marlon Hofstad, Hannah Lang, Malugi, Bless, Chloe Billette are just a few. Calvin Harris, Dimitri Vegas and Like Mike, A-Lock, Tiesto are just a few of the artists that have tracks like this using these kind of bass lines in their arsenal, on their portfolio. If you guys enjoyed any of the sounds in this video, make sure to be on the lookout for Poppy Trance Volume 2. Which should be coming out at the end of this week. And if you want to check out a video, consider checking out this video where I made that iconic Reese bassline and I explained the process of making it in 2 to 3 different ways. In this video, we just touched on the surface, but that video will shine a bit more light to it.